The vast oceans of the video game Subnautica and its sequel Below Zero teem with incredible life, some friendly and some deadly. While the series is focused on survival, the lifeforms of Subnautica are amazing even when they're trying to eat you. Possessing fascinating biology, bizarre behavioral patterns, and hidden mysteries. I've explored the various creatures of the series before on my channel, and in this special compilation episode, you can get the full documentary-style experience in one video. From the sunlit shallows to the deepest abyss, we'll explore the biology behind these puzzling aliens, and discover the role they play in their larger ecosystems. So let's take the plunge together and see what awaits us under the surface. Beginning in the safety of shallow, warm waters, we find that stable conditions have led to a region crowded with varied life. One of the first lifeforms we can spot are the peepers, or rather they spot us with their enormous dinner plate-like eyes. These easily identifiable creatures have evolved visual sensors capable of discerning colors not just in clear waters, but in a variety of lighting conditions. This, combined with their surprising speed, means that despite being herbivores, peepers aren't at the bottom of the food chain. That distinction instead belongs to these creatures, the rather unfortunate-looking garryfish. Docile herbivores that are remarkably slow, the garryfish make easy prey for most anything else in these shallow waters. All ecosystems, including the oceans of Earth, need something at the bottom of the food chain after all. Other common herbivores on 4546b include the bladderfish, which swims by contracting and expanding its translucent bladder, and the unusual boomerang, a horizontally symmetrical oddity that possesses a mouth full of sharp teeth to break down coral. On the subject of coral, the landscape of the safe shallows is dominated by one particularly unusual lifeform. These gargantuan tubes are large enough to swim through, and despite appearances, are very much alive. Aptly named giant coral tubes, they don't look much like the coral we know on Earth. These tubes have evolved to filter nutrients that flow through their center, and judging by their size and abundance, it's a strategy that has been quite successful. Gliding near the tubes is the elegant rabbit ray, the first of many ray species we may encounter. The undulating motion that the rabbit ray uses to swim through the clear seas is analogous to the underwater movements of various types of Earth rays. But it's not the movement of the rabbit ray that gives it its curious name. Instead, the rabbit ray's most defining features are its twin orange appendages that help it sense vibrations. These ear-like structures resemble the ears of rabbits, and so the aquatic rabbit ray shares a name with an otherwise dissimilar terrestrial herbivore. Beneath the shallows twist a network of underwater caves. While exploring one as I was gathering this footage, I heard a strange noise. And then a fish exploded in my face. That short-lived creature was a crash fish, an evolutionary oddity that is difficult to study due to its highly frustrating habit of exploding when anything gets close. While an animal exploding to defend its territory might seem too outlandish to evolve, there's a model of such behavior on our own planet. Though uncommon, certain species of ants have been observed erupting into goo to block tunnels when their nest is under threat. Truly, nature is highly unusual, no matter the planet. Elsewhere in the caves, the far less bothersome shuttlebugs drift near the stone walls. Shuttlebugs are challenging creatures to make sense of, with 3 legs and 3 mandibles that have evolved into fin-like tentacles. Despite looking slightly unsettling, analysis suggests shuttlebugs are too small to be a threat to most organisms, and have instead adapted to feed on the waste products of the ecosystem around them. Leaving the caves, you'll see our first large species is waiting for us, the gasopods. These rotund, leathery beasts resemble Earth manatees, yet have a curious defense that is all their own. Although in no way hostile, when threatened, gasopods will nonetheless release a deadly cloud of underwater mist, which I can't recommend ingesting. Chemical analysis of gasopods tells us the poisonous compound comes from the bulbous appendage at the end of their tail. Since gasopods are social creatures, it's even possible they use these clouds to communicate with one another. But while the gasopods are the largest creatures in the safe shallows, they're barely the tip of the proverbial iceberg when it comes to Planet 4546b. Venturing into the vast kelp forest, we'll find a radically different environment than the region we just left. Here, light is low thanks to the high volume of creepvine plants, creating a hidden ecosystem just like kelp-heavy regions in Earth's oceans. Here and there, clusters of creepvine seeds cast shadows across the environment like natural floodlights. I find myself wondering just what might be hidden among the swaying fronds. That is a stalker, the largest predator that makes its home in the dense creepvines. These fearsome customers possess a series of dorsal ridges to help them make tight turns, and their long, thin snout is likely adapted for ensnaring fish, as it greatly resembles the effective, slender snouts of real-life gharials. Yet at the edge of the kelp forest, one stalker is behaving rather oddly. This stalker is picking up various pieces of scrap metal with its snout, only to drop them after a short period. This behavior seems to serve no practical purpose, and indeed, the stalkers seem to simply have a fondness for shiny objects. Puzzling as this behavior might seem, however, the barracuda, a predatory earthfish, is also known to be attracted to shiny objects because it's evolved to spot the silvery glint of the fish it prefers to prey on. And when one considers the common prey of the stalker, this attraction to shiny materials makes perfect sense. In the murky depths of the kelp forest, schools of fast-moving hoopfish light up the dark with their vibrant coloring. A brief study of hoopfish anatomy reveals they get their name from their antennae, which extends from the top and bottom of their heads and bends around their tails, forming a hoop. Exactly why these stunning fish possess such intense and varied colors, however, is a mystery. On the subject of mysteries, the last fish of the kelp forest we'll see is quite the enigma. Meet the hoverfish, a peaceful herbivore that appears to hover on pads at the end of its 6 legs. Using these strange appendages, the hoverfish glides on the undersea currents in a manner quite dissimilar to any other fish on the planet. It's surprising to learn, therefore, that the hoverfish may actually be a distant relative of the nondescript bladderfish, with their legs actually a highly derived form of the bladderfish's primitive vacuole tubing. It's the kind of creature that could only exist in the kelp forest. Just beyond the waving creepvines, the landscape gives way to an alien grassy plateau. Here, the sandy terrain is almost completely carpeted with bloodgrass, as the seafloor is too dense for creepvines to take hold. And in the open space, even larger lifeforms are on the prowl. At the edge of the grassy plateau, a strange cloud of sand is gathering. As we swim closer to the unexpected turbulence, a creature with a huge fanged mouth lashes out. This is a sand shark, a predator with a distinctive hunting strategy. The sand shark burrows into the sand, then erupts out when unsuspecting prey swims by, ending the chase with a snap from its massive jaws. With segmented body armor and 6 rows of fearsome teeth, it's little wonder why these predators are so effective. And alien as their behavior might seem, some sharks on Earth employ a similar strategy in swimming along the sandy floor near the shoreline in search of food, although they of course don't possess the extreme tunneling abilities of the sand shark. A common target of the sand shark's brutal ambushes swims overhead. The spadefish doesn't look like much from most angles, but glimpse one from above and you'll spot its defining feature, a single cyclopsian eye. Closer analysis of the spadefish suggests it feeds on the sea floor, and its single eye allows the spadefish to spot predators above it. Its mottled green coloration suggests it normally hides among seagrasses, like many fish do on Earth. When a spadefish wanders onto the grassy plateaus, however, it is hopelessly exposed. On the far side of the Grassy Plateau, what appear to be tiny floating islands hang miraculously in the water. Upon closer inspection, these chunks of rock are all supported by colonies of the same curious life form, the floaters. Transparent gelatinous blobs, floaters are at once oddly beautiful and slightly silly looking. Analysis of these creatures reveal there are actually multiple microorganisms living in symbiosis, which we can compare to some deep-sea species of jellyfish. The floater's ability to suspend heavy objects, however, remains something of a mystery. Swimming close by the floating islands is a distant relative of the peeper called the Reginald. The entire back end of these oddly named fellows is composed of one large fin, and that fin's bright coloration appears to be part of a mating ritual. While it swims, the Reginald filters algae and other plant-like material from the water via 4 gill-like forward-facing orifices. While this is a noteworthy adaptation, something looming behind the Reginald demands our attention. In the abyss beyond the edge of the plateau, the largest organism we've yet to glimpse calls out through the deep. This is a reefback, a Leviathan-class organism that exceeds lengths of 220 feet or 70 meters and is, thankfully, quite friendly. Swimming closer to these gentle giants, we can see they're unlike any life form we've yet to glimpse. Possessing a thick exoskeleton, their shells have become an oasis of life. Adult reefbacks can support many ecosystems on their back, including many types of coral and small fish. And nearby this adult is a baby, a much smaller creature whose shell is not yet ready to support an ecosystem like its parents. I confess I spent some time just watching these creatures drift in their pods and listening to them call out to each other with complex sounds that suggest a surprising amount of intelligence. With the sun now getting low, it's time to venture deeper into the abyss and enter the foreboding final biome of the dunes. In this vast, empty expanse, life often flocks near hydrothermal vents. These great fissures on the sea floor release a rich chemical soup into the water, much like those that support life in the depths of Earth's oceans. But it's not life among the vents that concerns me. A terrifying roar comes from above. A Reaper Leviathan strikes out into the abyss. This aggressive apex predator possesses 4 mandibles at the front of its maw to drag in large prey, and at 180 feet or 55 meters in length, a hungry Reaper Leviathan can take down almost anything. Analysis of the organism's biology suggests the roar emitted by a Reaper is a form of sonar, meaning if you can hear it, the Reaper can see you. Thankfully, it seems this Reaper isn't hungry. And as I watch the deadly Leviathan vanish into the darkness, I realize I've done enough field work for the day. The sun has now set on 4546b, yet the wonders of this planet continue, as in the low light, various regions of the sea are transformed by stunning displays of bioluminescence. Even the reefback pod from earlier is now giving off a striking glow. This eerie beauty suggests there are many hidden wonders we have yet to see. To the north, beyond the edge of the Grassy Plateaus, huge mushroom trees grow in abundance. Despite their name and appearance, mushroom trees are actually a particularly long-lived species of coral. In the shade of these ancient giants, a new classification of life is swimming. These are jelly rays, an ethereal ray species with highly translucent bodies. In Earth's oceans, translucent lifeforms are quite common in the lower light depths. The jelly rays are therefore a sign we're getting closer to the deeper, and more fantastical, regions of 4546b. Beyond the safety of the mushroom forest, the twilight of the Bulbzone awaits. Here, luminescent bulb bushes dominate the landscape and have evolved to grow in this rocky, sandy environment thanks to a highly advanced system of roots. And along the seafloor, raging volcanic geysers launch boiling liquid and chunks of molten rock into the surrounding water. The extreme heat from these geysers charboils any fish that swims too close. An ominous light flickers in the murk. The source is an ant eel, a huge serpentine predator covered with glowing prongs that produce zaps of electricity. These aggressive creatures use electric discharges to intimidate other lifeforms and kill their prey with a single deadly shock. Such living batteries might seem biologically inexplicable, but the curious electric eel on Earth might help demonstrate how an organic creature could produce an electric field. Electric eels use disc-shaped cells packed into specialized organs to generate their electric currents, as incredible as that might sound. So it's possible that the ant eel's prongs contain similar cells, although the bioelectricity of an ant eel is far more extreme. A series of screeches announces the approach of a legion of bone sharks. Highly aggressive and territorial carnivores, it's unlucky to encounter so many at once. Their thickly armored exoskeletons, which give them their names, are adapted not just to deter larger predators but also other bone sharks. The distinctive segmentation of these exoskeletons suggests bone sharks might share a common ancestor with the sand sharks we glimpsed on our last outing. If so, it's a fearsome family tree. While returning to the shallows to prepare for the next leg of my journey, I spot a new type of colorful fish. Something about the way it looks is truly hypnotic, and I want to swim closer, and then it bites my nose. That is a mesmer, a sneaky little creature that looks harmless while its four fins are folded up, but unfurled can create hypnotic patterns that have evolved to distract prey while it goes in for the kill. Thankfully, it seems I'm a bit too big to be swallowed up, but this is one fish to avoid. With supplies replenished, it's time to venture further into the unknown. Under the seafloor, networks of caves lead deeper into the uncharted interior of planet 4546b. Some of these caves are massive and contain entire ecosystems of their own, and the Jellyshroom Cave is one of the most miraculous. Here, among the stalagmites, grow jellyshrooms. Massive, highly luminescent flora which might be distantly related to the tiny acid mushrooms of the shallows. In the purple light of the jellyshrooms shine the biters, small carnivores that stalk these caves for small prey. The antenna on their forehead seems to resemble the deep-sea anglerfish's lure at first glance, but the biter's antenna actually serves an entirely different purpose. It contains olfactory organs that help it detect bodily fluids in the water. In other words, the biter can smell its prey anywhere in the cavern. Unless, of course, the biter becomes prey itself. Winding through the cave is an unsettlingly lengthy crab snake, the apex predator of this environment. What makes this predator so deadly is not just its size, but its ability to hide in plain sight. The crab snake has a symbiotic relationship with the local jellyshrooms, using their hollow interior as the perfect lair from which to ambush prey. In behavior and appearance, the crab snake somewhat resembles Earth's bobbit worm, an unattractive predator that also ambushes its prey. In the Jellyshroom Caves, one needs to keep an eye out. Elsewhere on the seafloor, another shadowy cavern beckons. After many hours navigating the cave system, I surface in a cave that strangely seems lit by daylight. I realize I've stumbled upon something extremely rare for planet 4546b, dry land. This tiny island is the peak of an undersea mountain connected to an aquatic cave system, and it's one of the few places on the planet you can encounter terrestrial life. Scuttling along the beach are cave crawlers. As their name implies, these crab-like creatures have evolved to crawl along the sides of cave walls, which is likely why they were able to adapt to this fleeting landmass relatively quickly. Analysis of their biology suggests they possess a gas exchange membrane to breathe air, instead of fully functional terrestrial lungs. Soaring overhead is a life form that has spent much more time adapting to life above the waves. This is a sky ray, an avian creature that has, remarkably, evolved powered flight. Although its wings give it some resemblance to aquatic ray species, analysis shows no particular genetic link. Instead, the sky ray appears to have split off from the common evolutionary tree much earlier than most other species on the planet, perhaps at a time when dry land was more prevalent. In any case, it seems we've now seen all this island has to offer. Or maybe not. On one end of the island is a tremendous artificial spire. This mysterious monolith appears to be the work of advanced extraterrestrials, who, much like myself, came to this planet from afar. But did they come to study the life here like I did, or were their intentions more sinister? In any case, it seems this planet's greatest secret is still waiting to be uncovered. To the south, the seafloor plunges lower than ever before. We have come upon the Grand Reef. Here, orb-like blue plants called anchor pods risk floating off due to their gas-filled membrane, only staying in place due to their net-like root system. And nearby stomp a herd of sea treader leviathans. These vast herbivores roam the depths in search of plants on which to graze. The thunderous nature of their rhythmic steps is truly something to experience. Perhaps the most curious thing about these creatures is the fact they have 3 legs, something almost never glimpsed in nature. Analysis suggests their front leg is actually an elongated snout used to siphon plant material from the sea floor and to maintain balance. As alien as this might seem, there are some species of earth tripod fish with elongated fins they use to similarly stand on the sea floor. Right now, it appears the sea treader leviathans are migrating, so it's best not to disturb them. Beneath the Grand Reef, caverns take us further into the abyss. Here, the intimidating crab squid waits to butcher prey with its 10 limbs. Swim close to one and they'll unleash a mysterious bioelectric discharge, which has the properties of an electromagnetic pulse. While they appear to have massive brains, analysis suggests the large organ within their translucent sac is actually their stomach, which the crab squid fill with their bioluminescent prey. As a result, they seem attracted to light sources, convincing me to make a hasty exit from my submarine. This turns out to be a good call, as it drags my sub into the depths. If there are other creatures like the crab squid on the prowl down here, I'm going to need something a little larger. For the next perilous leg of the journey, I'll be piloting a Cyclops submarine, a vehicle that should be able to withstand the crushing depths of the abyss. Below the deep Grand Reef awaits a surreal environment of eerie green fog. This is the Lost River, a region covered in alkaline brine pools, which give the illusion of an underwater stream. Brine pools also exist in Earth's oceans and are extremely toxic due to their high salinity. Best not to get too close. Above these pools drift the haunting ghost rays. Relatives of the jelly rays from the mushroom forest, in these extreme depths, the ghost rays have become almost completely transparent, to the point where you can see the red of their internal organs. Elsewhere in the Lost River, blood crawlers, the spindly relatives of the cave crawlers, stride above the brine on stilt-like legs, rather unsettling forms of life. In the central chamber, something truly horrifying is waiting. This ancient fossil belongs to a colossus far larger than any that currently swims through the seas. Indeed, it's so massive that its ribcage has become part of the Lost River's landscape. We should count ourselves lucky this unknown genus seems to have gone extinct long ago. Yet still alive are the river prowlers. These aggressive, transparent predators haunt the gravesite of the Leviathan like vengeful ghosts. Even more frightening, their 4 head tendrils can lash out when attacking, allowing them to pull in prey. Not the sort of creature you'd like to encounter in the dark. But there is a strange beauty to certain regions of the Lost River. In a cove under the central chamber, the brine becomes a harmless blue, and ghost rays flock around a massive central tree. This tree appears to be an ancient nesting ground, as it is grown around a giant bioluminescent egg. While the egg itself is beautiful, whatever hatches out of an egg that size might not be. To find the adult form of the huge creature that hatches from this egg, we must venture into the nightmarish darkness of the Dead Zone. Here, at the edge of the habitable region for most fauna, we've found our giants, or they've found us. These aggressive monsters are ghost leviathans, and they're a major threat to this expedition. Analysis of their jaws suggests they feed on microscopic lifeforms that help them reach their massive sizes, although they seem fully capable of feeding on something larger. Time to head back the way we came. The mystery of the giant egg has been solved, but that's not the only strange thing in the Lost River. These ruins of a massive alien structure resemble the one on the island. The structure is guarded by these lifeforms, the Warpers, who possess a mind-bending ability. At will, they can somehow fold space-time and vanish into portals. This is not the ability of a natural lifeform. It seems we are dealing with an artificial creation. Searching for answers, I enter the ruined building. Here we can see the unfinished artificial body of a Warper. They did not evolve and are a creation of the extraterrestrials. But for what purpose? Translating a digital message, it seems these alien architects came to 4546b many years ago, searching for a cure for a disease. And the Warpers are their artificial quarantine enforcers. Given the lack of any living architects on 4546b, it appears that they were unsuccessful. On a table in a nearby lab, they've left behind an egg of a curious creature. After returning to the surface to recharge my submarine, I hatch the egg and this delightful lifeform emerges. This is a cuttlefish, a friendly, rotund little creature that displays high levels of intelligence and curiosity. I've also found it's quite a fan of treats. Analysis suggests it's possible this creature has been imported from another world, or even genetically altered to be extra friendly. It's possible the architect aliens kept them as pets, just like we do with dogs. It's tempting to stay longer with the cuttlefish in the shallows, yet I can't help but feel that in the abyss there are more mysteries I've yet to solve. Beneath the Lost River, the landscape blazes with the fiery glow of molten rock. We've reached the lava zone, the deepest environment of them all. Here, incredible heat-resistant forms of life have evolved, like the crimson ray, a ray species that have developed a molten coloring to help it blend in with the lava, and the magmarang, a relative of the boomerang with a beautiful glowing tail fin. Another remarkable form of life is the lava larva, a grub-like creature that feeds off geothermal and electrical energy. I first learned this fact when I found one stuck to the windshield of my Cyclops, draining its energy. While this behavior is somewhat annoying, the energy conversion capabilities of this creature are truly remarkable. On the molten floor is something highly alarming. These skeletons belong to Reaper Leviathans. It seems that somewhere in the lava zone is a predator so large it can drag Reaper Leviathans into the depths. This doesn't bode well. Basking in the red glow of the molten rock are lava lizards. These predators are too small to be our culprits, but they're nonetheless quite deadly. For defense, they are able to cover their bodies with hardened, lava-like natural armor. While such a behavior is far more extreme than anything on Earth, scaly-foot snails, which I've discussed on this channel before, can survive in volcanic vents by incorporating iron scales into their body like medieval armor. However, lava lizard biology takes this to a new level. At the end of the lava zone lurks a massive chamber. The loudest roar we've encountered on our voyage shakes the cavern. we found our Reaper Leviathan Slayer. This is a sea dragon leviathan. Possessing both arms and tentacles, these creatures exceed 350 feet or 112 meters in length. Sea dragons get their name from their ability to consume molten materials and expel them at their adversaries like they're breathing fire. I can only hope this absurdly deadly lifeform doesn't notice me. No such luck. A huge blow from the Leviathan rocks the Cyclops submarine. As a result, there appears to be a minor leak. Out of options, I have to abandon ship. Luckily, I have one last hope in the prawn suit, a deep-sea mechanical walker that should make an ideal escape pod. Ejecting from the Cyclops, it's a bit of a drop to the bottom. But it appears my plan has worked, as the sea dragon Leviathan thinks its foe has been vanquished. Here, at the end of our journey, lies a final, mysterious building. With some difficulty, I pilot the prawn suit over to it. Inside, locked in a containment facility, the largest creature of Subnautica is waiting. This is a Sea Emperor Leviathan, and although it appears to be a relative of the sea dragon, it is in no way hostile. Like real-world baleen whales, the largest creatures on Earth, its diet consists solely of microorganisms. While the Sea Emperor Leviathan is so large I am unable to get a proper scan of it, it seems that it can somehow manipulate neurons to communicate telepathically, as it told me of its plight. The Sea Emperor was entombed here by the alien architects in the hope it could provide a cure for their disease, which I believe is in strict violation of the Intergalactic Code of Biological Ethics. At the request of this intelligent creature, I agree to take its hatchlings back to the surface with me. Watching the first moments of baby Sea Emperor's lives is a truly wondrous experience, even after all the biological marvels I've glimpsed thus far. Sadly, the Sea Emperor is at the end of its lifespan and informs me that it won't be coming with us. At the very least, I'm happy I can help their babies live on in freedom. It is a bittersweet conclusion to a long and winding journey. With the Sea Emperor babies returning to their natural habitat, our study of this region of Subnautica is at its end. But there is another region of planet 4546b. Sector 0 is a region of extremely low temperatures, where organisms of all types have had to adapt to the cold. Beginning on the ice floats above the shallows, a curious lifeform makes its home in this region where land meets the sea. Huddled together on a float is a flock of waddling penguins. Penguins are small predatory fauna, which aren't the most graceful on land. When a penguin dives underwater, however, the creature's unique retractable tail allows them to twist through the currents with remarkable grace. Despite their cute appearance, penguins are carnivores, and their beaks open horizontally, revealing a rather alarming set of teeth. In their body shape and general behavior, penguins show a high degree of convergence with Earth penguins, with both species adapting to an Arctic environment in similar ways. And on any ice float with penguins, you will also find penglings, the juvenile form of penguins who never stray far from their parents. Even more than adults, infant penglings are extremely awkward on land, but what they might lack in overall balance, they make up for in endless enthusiasm. And while penglings might possess the same, somewhat alarming fanged mouth, they're remarkably docile creatures, perfectly content with being gently lifted up. As nice as it is to briefly hold a baby pengling, however, I don't want to disrupt their natural routines. As we dive into the polar waters, a shallow, surprisingly warm region awaits just under the ice floats. The landscape of this coastal sea is dominated by coral bridges, great arches formed by rapidly growing polyps that can exceed 600 feet, or 200 meters in length. Bioluminescent blue barnacles grow on the coral's underside, which a scan suggests are actually separate species taking advantage of the bridge's structure. But why would the coral bridges grow into such strange, arcing shapes? The answer lies in a phenomenon known as thigmotropism, a pattern of growth observed in earth plants in response to touch stimulus. Thigmotropism is what allows vines to wrap around and climb up poles, and it's the likely reason the great coral bridges always grow from one rock to another. Just beyond these coral bridges, we encounter an Arctic peeper, who watches for predators with its massive yellow eyes. Relatives of the common peeper in the tropical seas, Arctic peeper's scales have evolved a white hue for better camouflage against the ice. Other familiar herbivores also swim here, like the translucent bladderfish and the vibrant hoopfish. Together, these species form an important base in the Sector Zero food chain for the larger, less familiar creatures that lurk under the ice. Swimming northwards, I've reached a region known as the Sparse Arctic. This entire biome is situated under thick ice shelves and receives little direct sunlight. On the underside of these icebergs, hazardous ice formations known as brinicles protrude like jagged fangs. Highly unstable, brinicles frequently shatter and crash to the ocean floor. Yet as foreboding as the Sparse Arctic seems, some truly remarkable species thrive here. This odd-looking fellow is called a brinewing. With its rotund form and beak-like mouth, it gives the impression of an ineffectual herbivore. But the brinewing is a powerful predator. To hunt, it unleashes a rapid-fire torrent of supercooled saline solution that freezes in the water, and can encase its prey in ice. A scan suggests that the brinewing uses a highly specialized bladder to produce this supercooled brine from the surrounding salt water. As unusual an adaptation as this might seem, the earth archerfish can shoot down insects using water jets launched from their specialized mouths, and are remarkably accurate. Other species in the Sparse Arctic have very different survival strategies, like the enormous Titan holefish, a slow-moving herbivore with a strange hole in the center of its body. The Titan holefish is a relative of the tiny, guppy-sized tropical holefish, and is so much larger than its cousin you can actually swim through the hole at its center. But what is the purpose of this hole? A scan suggests the gel-like interior is lined with hundreds of eggs, but curiously, the egg's DNA doesn't match that of the holefish. The mystery of the eggs is revealed when I spot a tiny life form swimming alongside the holefish. Soon many others join in, swarming like a bee colony around a hive. These are symbiotes, small predators that have evolved to make their nests in the hole of the Titan holefish, and in turn defend the holefish at all cost, and even provide it with food. This highly cooperative lifestyle is an example of a mutualistic partnership, one of the few on planet 4546b. As a result, the Titan holefish has evolved to be remarkably unintelligent, swimming forward on impulse, fully trusting the complex ecosystem that supports its every need. Just beyond the Sparse Arctic, the bare sand gives way to the teeming Arctic kelp forest. Here, creepvine plants sway in the polar current, casting light into the depths with their bioluminescent seeds. These creepvine plants are close relatives of the green variety which grow in the warm waters of the tropics, although the chemical composition of the polar waters has turned them a pale yellow. Among the fronds, familiar fish like the boomerang flit between the leaves, and some very unfamiliar fish swim here also. These extremely bizarre life forms are called spinnerfish, and have perhaps the most peculiar method of swimming ever conceived. Using 3 pairs of siphons along the side of their body, spinnerfish jet along like living water wheels. At a glance, its bizarre body plan somewhat resembles the larval form of an ocean sunfish, but ultimately the spinnerfish is one of a kind. Speaking of one of a kind, I soon spot an incredible life form. I'm just about to scan it when it swims in and snatches the scanner right from my hands. Frustrated, I give chase, and find the creature occasionally looks back and waves the stolen scanner to mock me. Thankfully, I'm able to outmaneuver it and snatch my tool back. Finishing the scan, I discover this creature might be annoying, but it's truly remarkable, with both a developed brain and finger-like appendages for object manipulation. It's called a sea monkey, a nickname it shares with Earth brine shrimp. Unlike those sea monkeys, however, the sea monkey of planet 4546b seems about as intelligent as an actual primate, meaning it's the smartest life form I've found in Sector 0. Given time, the sea monkeys might have an incredible future trajectory. I just hope they evolve to be less annoying. With the kelp forest thoroughly charted, it's time to regroup on the surface. Sticking my head above the water, however, I find the shallows are engulfed in a dangerous polar storm. Looking around, I realize the penguin flock from earlier might be in serious danger. Upon arriving at their ice float, however, I find the penguins unbothered by the weather, simply huddling for warmth and waiting out the rain. Truly, penguins are intriguing creatures. With the sun thankfully returning, it occurs to me that there's still much I have to learn about penguin flock dynamics, but I don't want to disrupt them further with my presence. Time for some innovation. I've devised an alternative, less conspicuous method of observation. This machine is my spy pengling, and it will hopefully be able to keep an eye on the penguin flock with its hidden cameras while I continue my expedition across Sector 0. I'm uncertain if the penguins will be fooled into accepting this robot as one of their own, but the only way to find out is to test it. As inconspicuously as I can, I deploy the robot. Taking control via an auxiliary remote, I navigate the spy pengling into the midst of the flock. It's not a perfect disguise, but the penguins don't seem particularly bothered by its presence either. Though it's unlikely this robot is fooling them, it doesn't appear to disrupt their natural behavior. I'll leave the flock under its watchful eye and head deeper into the unknown regions. Even further out to sea, the mysterious Lilypad Islands hang in the water, seemingly by miraculous means. These floating chunks of rock are held up by giant lily pads, an enormous type of plant that defines this ecosystem. Giant lily pads are indeed so large that it's possible to stand on their leafy tops without fear of sinking. But it's the bizarre life that swims in the lily pad shadows that makes this region truly unique. Take, for example, the hilariously named newtfish. With its colorful markings and innocent, beak-like snout, the newtfish can easily pass as a herbivore, but any fish that makes that mistake is soon swallowed whole. The newtfish's beak is in fact a stretchy, extendable lip lined with barb-like teeth it uses to envelop prey. This kind of extendable mouth somewhat resembles that of the sarcastic fringe head of the Pacific Ocean. Best to keep an eye out. But there are bigger predators here than the newtfish. The brute shark is an aggressive predator that scours the depths with its ghostly white eyes. With huge fangs and a massive bony jaw, they feed on just about anything they can catch. Like many earth sharks, they prefer to attack via ambush from above or below. The only good news is that while they're deadly, brute sharks aren't particularly fast. Still, if I don't keep my distance, I might be on the menu. Closer to the surface, I spot a remarkably colorful life form. Swimming nearer, the edges of my vision blur, and I feel just a little dizzy. Has the sky always been that color? Everything feels floaty for a while. Eventually, the effect wears off, and with a clear head, I understand what just happened. That life form, known as a lily paddler, possesses the unique ability to disorient would-be attackers with the mesmerizing patterns on its colorful appendages. It's an impressive defense, and a vital one for a creature like a lily paddler which is otherwise quite vulnerable. I just wish it didn't make my head hurt. A shadow passes overhead. Just above me, a whale-sized leviathan opens its mouth to a tremendous size and swallows an entire school of fish in just a single gulp. This is a glow whale, and while they're highly effective at feeding on small fish, they're thankfully quite gentle. At almost 100 feet, or 30 meters in length, they're the first Leviathan-class organism I've encountered in Sector 0. and a highly intelligent one. A scan of the glow whales indicate they possess many organs that are capable of bioluminescence, most notably around the corners of their eyes and the ends of their horns. Careful not to startle it, I brush a glow whale under its eye, causing a faint glow. It's difficult to interpret whether this is a random response or an attempt to send a message. In any case, the glow whale seems content with my presence. As I watch it rejoin its pod, I wish I could stay with this spectacular lifeform for longer. But before the sun sets, there's one last region I need to chart. Underneath layers of snow and ice, there are telltale signs that a permanent landmass makes up a portion of Sector 0. Dry land is so scarce on this ocean planet that it's impossible to guess what sorts of life forms might live farther inland. Passing through a narrow canyon, I find strange plant-animal hybrids that seem to be growing from the walls. These are thermal lilies, organisms that spend most of their time tracking the sun and absorbing its energy, but also turn to track my movement as I pass. A scan suggests they aren't dangerous, and thanks to the thermal radiation they've absorbed, they're actually a welcome source of heat in Sector 0's frigid interior. Still, it's unsettling the way they follow me. Beyond the canyon, a snowy landscape far too vast to traverse on foot awaits. Luckily, I have an alternate method of transportation. This is a snow fox, a hoverbike designed for land-based expeditions. Zooming over the Arctic terrain, I find it's got a bit of a kick. At these speeds, I should be able to chart this region fairly effectively. A short time later, I spot a hairy creature in the distance. The question is it friendly? Not friendly. Putting the snow fox in reverse, I discover the creature gives chase with alarming speed. After several near misses, I back away to a safe distance. That quadrupedal predator was a snow stalker, and while it nearly sank its claws into me, I can't help but be excited at the discovery of a terrestrial land animal on planet 4546b. With its white fur and imposing bulk, the snow stalker has converged on a body plan similar to Earth polar bears. I'm curious about the lineage of this land animal. A brief analysis reveals, surprisingly, that the snow stalker is actually a distant relative of the fully aquatic stalker I encountered in the tropical region. While these two species diverged a long time ago, there are still some telltale signs of their relation in the shape of their head and their dorsal spines. A fascinating genetic ancestry. Speaking of which, a short way off from the snow stalker, I spot what appears to be its cub playing in the snow. Just a fraction of the size of its parent, this baby snow stalker is far less aggressive than an adult. Well, mostly. Trekking onward, I reach an ice sheet marked by jagged, towering ice formations. This region is known as the Arctic Spires, and it's home to a giant. A huge head bursts from below the ice. Seconds later, a massive serpentine leviathan rises into the air, and nearly takes me out with a swipe from its massive horn. This terror of the frozen plains is an ice worm. At over 300 feet, or 90 meters long, it's almost twice the size of a Reaper Leviathan, and by far the largest creature I've seen in Sector 0. Its glowing horn is superheated through an exothermic chemical reaction, allowing it to melt through the very ice its prey is standing on. Time to make a fast exit. Speeding away on my snow fox, I spot the snow stalker and its cub from earlier fleeing beside me. We barely make it to safety. With creatures like the ice worm around, I think I might put off doing more field work till tomorrow. While the sun sets overhead, I check in to find my spy pangolin has become a veritable member of the flock, and has done an excellent job keeping an eye on its feathered companions. Together, my pangolin bot and I sit and watch the gorgeous Sector 0 sunset. And with the night comes a final surprise. The sky is lit up by a dazzling aurora similar to the aurora borealis in the northern latitudes of Earth. On our planet, these northern lights are a result of disturbances in the magnetosphere caused by solar wind. and we can theorize that they have the same origin on planet 4546b. It's a beautiful, imposing display that can make one feel a little isolated in the universe. But with my spy pangling beside me, I don't feel truly alone. A transmission interrupts my thoughts. It seems I'm picking up a mysterious communication. But from where? And who or what is sending it out? The mysterious transmission is emanating from the murky waters of a region known as the Deep Twisty Bridges. Diving into these alien depths, the only light comes from the bioluminescent coral bridges that spiral throughout this cavernous abyss. The dimness of the deep has transformed all life that swims in the gloom. Like pale ghosts, the skeletal spinefish haunt these depths. A subspecies of the hoopfish, the spinefish have become nearly translucent and possess rib-like markings that give them a deathly appearance. The phenomenon of certain deep-sea fish becoming transparent is present in Earth's oceans as well, notably in the barrel-eye fish, an animal that possesses a head made of translucent tissue to allow it to look upwards and spot its preferred prey right through the top of its head. Truthfully, the barrel-eye fish is an animal that would seem right at home in the oceans of planet 4546b. But the spinefish isn't a carnivore, so despite its haunting appearance, it's no real danger. But there are genuine dangers here. A huge predator swims torpedo-like among the bridges. With unexpected speed, it rushes in and attempts to swallow me whole, a fate I'm barely able to avoid by prying its jaws open. The predator continues to give chase, but I escape by swimming into a crevice it can't reach. That terror of the abyss was a squid shark, a highly aggressive fauna species that is the apex predator of this region. Analysis suggests its terrifying bursts of speed come from two vents on either side of its body, which provide jet propulsion. Through this adaptation, the squid shark, like its name suggests, combines the most formidable aspects of deep-sea squids and macropredator shark species. The result is a deadly amalgamation I'll have to keep a wide distance from if I ever want to find the source of the transmission. Staying close to the ocean floor, a curious, waving plant catches my eye. Swimming in for a closer look, the lifeform lashes out with a long tendril and pulls me towards a mouth-like opening. After a few frantic punches, the creature releases its tentacle and I swim out of range. That was a spiky trap, which isn't actually a plant at all, but a highly unusual form of animal. This carnivorous lifeform blends into the terrain, camouflaging itself among vegetation and catching fish and unwary explorers with its adhesive tendrils when they swim too close. And despite its lack of mobility, this strategy seems to be highly effective. In the deep twisty bridges, one must always stay alert. Elsewhere on the sea floor, I discover a strange glowing device near the signal source. This ruined fragment matches the strange structures present in the tropics, which belong to a group of alien architects. I'd assumed all the architects had perished, but with the signal beckoning me onwards, I wonder if I was mistaken. At last, I reach a mysterious undersea facility. As I navigate through the halls, an unknown voice urges me to hurry. Entering a central chamber, I find both the signal and the voice have been coming from this cube-shaped computer. The voice turns out to be that of an architect, who, thousands of years before, had stored his consciousness within the computer. Speaking through the cube, the architect explains he was a scientist like me, and is now likely the last of his kind. Wanting to help a fellow researcher, I offer to transfer the lonely consciousness to my field computer and take him with me on my expedition. The architect accepts and warns me to brace for transfer. A little too late, I realize something might have been lost in translation. Awakening with a mild headache, I can hear the architect's voice quite clearly, and learn this is because he downloaded himself directly into my brain. It was an honest mistake, as architects don't recognize a boundary between technology and the body. While this is an intriguing revelation about architect biology, it means I now have an unanticipated mental roommate. Returning to the shallows, we formulate a plan. We'll use our combined knowledge to continue to chart the biology of life in Sector 0, but along the way we'll gather the material needed to fabricate a body that my new friend can transfer into. He tells me his designation is AL-AN, so I'll call him Al-An. Picking up where Al-An's research left off, we venture to the sprawling expanse of the West Arctic. Here, great icebergs float above a seemingly bottomless region of the sea, creating a profound sense of scale. And among these giant icebergs swim undiscovered oddities. Gliding through the blue is an animal that is difficult to unravel. With two sets of wing-like fins, it's not clear what sort of lifeform we're observing at a glance. But this lifeform is, in fact, an Arctic ray, the first of many ray species in Sector 0. While its body plan has clearly diverged from Earth rays by having 4 wing structures instead of 2, the Arctic ray is a highly agile lifeform. And it has to be, if it wants to avoid the top predator of the West Arctic. This is a pinacarid, an intelligent and social predator that spends half its time on ice floats above the water. Pinacarids have converged on an ecological niche similar in many respects to Earth seals, and are remarkably friendly towards humans, even showing a cute curiosity when lured in with a tasty piece of fish. Al-An's analysis suggests their 14 flippers make them acrobatic hunters underwater. This unusually high number of flippers resembles the anatomy of Anomalocarids, a group from Earth's Cambrian period who similarly possessed multiple fins for locomotion. Descending deeper into the West Arctic waters, what appears to be a legion of pulsating eyes stare back at us. This is, in fact, a colony of eye jellies, gelatinous lifeforms that harbor an enormous hemispheric eye on the tops of their bodies. Despite their somewhat alarming appearance, these creatures live remarkably passive lives, drifting slowly on the currents in vast colonies, paying little mind to other species. Al-An notes that they are capable of releasing a small electric shock if we swim too close, however, so we'll give the group a wide berth. Upon one of the West Arctic icebergs, we notice an entrance to a small cave. Venturing inside, the reflected ice caught in the afternoon sun resembles the brilliance of the night sky. And within this ethereal cave, a strange egg appears stranded on a cave wall. It's not a species Al-An recognizes, and it seems about ready to hatch. Bringing the egg to the warmth of the shallows, after some time, this creature emerges. The unusual hatchling turns out to be a trivalve, and much like the cuttlefish of the tropics, it's a remarkably friendly and intelligent creature that is quite a fan of treats. A scan suggests the body of this naturally inquisitive lifeform is made of a flexible exoskeleton, and somewhat resembles the shell of an Earth nautilus in its shape. It's tempting to relax in the shallows with the trivalve for longer, but Al-An reminds me we still have other areas to chart. And the next leg of the journey will be perilous indeed. Luckily, I have a new classification of submersible to aid in the voyage. This is a sea truck, an underwater vehicle that will allow us to go lower into the crushing depths of Sector 0 than ever before. At the helm of the sea truck, we venture into the vast biome of the Thermal Zone. The edge of this region, an area known as the Thermal Spires, is marked by a forest of hydrothermal vents. These chimney-shaped structures are formed from dissolved minerals pushed up from the planet's crust, and are home to all kinds of remarkable life. Gliding between the vents is a brightly colored featherfish. Defined by their unusual crescent-shaped fin structure, featherfish are one of the more graceful herbivores in Sector 0. A highly successful species, in some regions they gather in schools numbering in the thousands. We are admiring one such school when an intimidating creature paddles by. This vicious-looking armored predator is a Cryptosuchus and is covered in sharp spines. Snapping wildly, it closes in and then retreats just as quickly. As it turns out, the contrarian Cryptosuchus is one species where its bark is truly worse than its bite. While it appears fearsome, a scan suggests its menacing shell is adapted to aid in heat absorption among the thermal vents. And so this false tyrant paddles away to try and scare off something a bit smaller. Far deeper into the thermal zone, the dark blue of a biome known as the tree spires beckons. These waters are lit by the bioluminescent flora that grow on the sides of tree-like hydrothermal vents. In this distinctive region, the equally distinctive discus fish undulates along. Its flat, semi-transparent body is highly unusual, and it seems to contain strange green organs. A study of the discus fish reveals this green color comes from symbiotic algae-like organisms, living within specialized body cavities that provide the discus fish with food. Strange as this might sound, emerald sea slugs of Earth also photosynthesize using algae that grows within their bodies. Since there isn't much sunlight here in the depths for plant growth, it's likely the discus fish spends part of its life cycle in a brighter region of Sector 0. Elsewhere in the thermal zone, we can spot a teardrop-shaped arrow ray. This ray species has an elongated body and a rather triangular head, which it can tilt to perform unpredictable maneuvers. At the ends of the arrow ray's fins grow sharp, talon-like tips that deter attackers who manage to catch up, meaning the arrow ray certainly isn't defenseless. A huge lifeform passes in front of our submarine. Without warning, it shrieks and latches onto the windshield with its front mandibles. Gunning the engine, I'm barely able to twist out of the deadly grip. That Leviathan-class organism was a chelicerate, a brute that grows over 130 feet, or 30 meters in length. Its body is covered in a thick, segmented exoskeleton that grows in overlapping plates, which may offer protection from the atmospheric pressure. Since the chelicerate are so aggressive and potentially deadly, they're a challenging species to study up close. Fascinating as they are, we both hope we don't encounter any more of them. At the very bottom of the sea floor, an indescribably massive lifeform is waiting. This is a vent garden, a stationary leviathan that anchors itself above hydrothermal vents and consumes 100% of the nutrients they release. At over 360 feet, or 110 meters, the vent garden is, by far, the largest leviathan of Sector 0. The only things in Earth's oceans that resemble vent gardens are certain types of siphonophores, soft-bodied entities which, like the vent gardens, are also technically colonies of smaller organisms working in tandem. But what's most incredible about the vent garden is the internal ecosystem of plants it supports within its hollow, bell-shaped center. And remarkably, a scan indicates it would be safe to enter this environment ourselves. Exiting the submarine, we tentatively swim up towards the light, and at last emerge within the microcosm of the vent garden. This mini ecosystem supports aquatic flora on branching platforms that in turn help absorb some of the heavy metals emitted by the vents below. Exploring the hidden biosphere of a vent garden is a downright magical experience. But the unknown still beckons. Pushing further into the abyss than ever before, we've reached the edge of the habitable region for most fauna. Surrounded by total darkness, Al-An is starting to get worried that we've strayed too far. And he seems to be right. A huge chelicerate emerges from the blackness, almost twice the size as the one from the tree spires. This pale mutation is called a void chelicerate, and it's not alone. We've stumbled into a pack. Time to head back as fast as we possibly can. I don't think either of us plan on revisiting this area anytime soon. Returning to the safety of the research base, I have, with Al-An's help, given our station a bit of an upgrade. As it turns out, having an alien scientist downloaded into your brain can be quite useful. And while Al-An still doesn't understand the purpose of basic things like music, or why I start every morning with coffee, together we've successfully mapped much of Sector 0. Yet a deep scan tells us there's a strange signature coming from a large ice cave we've yet to visit. The cave is far to the inland of Sector 0. At last, we enter the cavern and discover an enormous frozen creature encased in a cave wall. This Leviathan-class organism has been entombed here for thousands of years, as Al-An remembers encountering their kind when he was a researcher here long ago. Since this species is, hopefully, now extinct, the only way to study it is to drill into the ice. Taking a DNA sample from the creature's foot, I'm able to determine the lifeform was quadrupedal, and spent at least a portion of its time on land, something unusual for planet 4546b. Perhaps this frozen Leviathan suggests an era in the distant past where land was more plentiful and great titans like this one roamed across it. In any case, I'm certainly glad this particular specimen is now long dead. I think. At long last, we now have all the necessary materials needed to fabricate Al-An's new body. The only problem is that the one architect facility that can create such a compatible vessel is located in a region known as the Crystal Caves. These caverns are the deepest biome of them all, and the last frontier of planet 4546b. And since the refractive crystals mean any scans of the region come back fragmented, there's no telling what else is down there. Navigating the Purple Chasm, this environment possesses a strange beauty, and equally strange lifeforms can be found in these depths. The Triops is a tiny organism that spends much of its time hiding from predators in the surrounding terrain. The Triops stand out biologically, however, thanks to their distinctive three-eyed ocular system. In nature, a lifeform evolving three distinct eyes isn't particularly common, but it's not altogether unheard of. Artemia is a genus of aquatic crustaceans that possess two eyes mounted on flexible stalks and a third stationary eye situated in the center of their head. So the diminutive Triops is in good company. Further into the planet's crust, we've arrived at the Fabricator Caves, a secondary layer of the Crystal Caves where a high concentration of the element beryllium led to the formation of striking red crystals. To brave this extreme geochemical environment, I've donned the prawn suit, a deep-sea mechanical walker that kept me safe on the last stages of my journey in the tropics. Stomping along the ocean floor, I spot a small crustacean nearby. Given its diminutive stature, I'm not particularly worried, until it launches itself at my prawn suit. This is a rock puncher, a pint-sized predator which is a heavy hitter nonetheless. Its hardened claws can thrust forward at close to the speed of sound to break rock and bone alike. In many respects, the rock puncher is similar to the precocious mantis shrimp. These creatures possess spring-loaded biological hammer clubs that can strike prey faster than the speed of a bullet, giving the mantis shrimp the ability to truly punch above its weight class. And the rock puncher is no different. Time to de-escalate the situation by moving elsewhere. We're now very close to the fabrication facility when a thunderous roar shakes the cavern. A huge Leviathan grips my prawn suit and pulls me towards a glowing gullet. After smacking it with my prawn suit's arms, the nightmare serpent temporarily drops me. Backing into a narrow gap, it seems the Leviathan cannot follow. We're safe. For now. That was a shadow Leviathan, which at almost 200 feet, or 60 meters, is the single most dangerous predator of Sector 0. Its elongated body gives this monster the appearance of a giant eel. Analysis suggests its bioluminescent digestive tract glows due to light-seeking phytoplankton that draw in unwary fish, and its mouth also secretes a highly acidic compound. We're lucky we were able to escape such a terrifying life form unscathed. Or have we? Looking up, I notice my prawn suit is leaking from its fight with the shadow Leviathan. Our only hope now is to reach the fabrication facility before the shadow finds me again. But with the familiar green glow of architect technology up ahead, at last we've reached the ultimate destination. Heading inside, I find a facility quite like the one I first discovered Al-An within. Putting in the materials we've gathered, the facility begins the process of fabrication. Activating the final sequence, Al-An and I watch as the vessel is constructed. This new body is composed of the DNA of 27 different species, and various inorganic materials as well, so it should be quite the upgrade. At last, Al-An's body is complete. After so much effort, it's almost surreal to reach this point. I think about telling my friend he looks a bit like a glowing purple centaur, but decide that would probably just confuse him. With Al-An now out of my mind and settled into his new vessel, he doesn't need my assistance to continue his research. We both return to the surface, and Al-An informs me he'll be going back to his home planet via warp gate to see if there are any other architects still living. It is a somewhat bittersweet feeling as I realize this is goodbye. Working with another researcher, in particular an alien one, has been a special privilege. Alone on planet 4546b once more, I consider all I've seen on this wondrous planet. From nerve-wracking dangers to unexpected allies, it's been a remarkable journey. But now, at last, the time has come for me to depart as well. For who knows what else is waiting among the stars. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this entry, please lend your support by liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification icon to stay up to date on all things curious. See you in the next video.